This is week 9 in the winter trimester. I'm Jennifer Marie and this is my Atelier diary. This has been a good week for my figure painting. I got a lot done this week. So Monday, what I did was I started in the shadow shape and worked on correcting the shadow shape, the drawing of it, and then also the tone, darkening the tone. And with the tone, working with the shadow line and all the transitions in the shadow line. So that day I was really working with the shadow shape and also the dark halftone that's right around the shadow shape. So I can really work on the transitions, making sure that the shadow shape transitions really dissipate properly into the light shape. And then I also worked with the background because I want to make sure the background's pretty dark, and so I want to make that show in my painting. I usually will work with the background and the shadow shape at the same day because I want to make sure that the background and the shadow shape kind of look like they become one. So I'm compressing those darker values so then I can get a better effect of light in the light shape. So working with the background, I'm not just painting the background separately from painting the shadow. What I'm doing is I'll take the background and I'll go into the shadow shape a little bit and then push that shadow color back into the background a little bit. So I'm getting a really even looking paint surface instead of painting the background up to the shadow, stopping, and then painting the shadow up to the background and stopping, because then that can create valleys in the paint surface. So I'm trying to be really conscious of this, and also too making sure that the edges of the shadow shape where it meets the background, they're as varied as they are in nature. So some parts are sharper and some parts are softer, so making sure that the shadow line really reflects that. Something else that I'm trying with this painting is something a little different than I think about when I'm working on the background. So before, I try to make it look like there's atmosphere in the painting, so the figure looks like it's in its own space. But I honestly am kind of more working on just the area of the background that's immediately around the figure. And I think I want to change my mindset a little bit and think about the paintings kind of is its own, a window into its own world. So I want to make Kevin really look like he's in his own space. So for example, usually I will paint a background color and then the plane of the floor that he's standing on, but super simply, so all the attention's on the figure. And I still want all the attention to be on the figure, but I'm going to try and push the background into being slightly more specific. So I want to show the different planes that he's standing on, also kind of a more convincing the shadow that he casts on the ground, and not just make it look like atmosphere, but try and get as much space behind Kevin before it hits the gray sheet as I actually see it. So that's going to be a challenge that I really want to go for, but also, like I said, making sure that I don't want the background, especially the floor where there's things that he's standing on and you kind of see some red carpet. I don't want that to be distracting at all, so still balance it with making a more specific background, but making sure also that attention doesn't go to the background or to the floor, but rather Kevin in the focal point. So then on Tuesday, I looked at my painting, seeing what the farthest thing from nature was so I could work on that. And that was definitely the light shape, because I feel like I got a pretty convincing tone relationship between the shadows and the background. And the tones were making sense with what I was seeing in nature, but then the light shape of Kevin was still my imprimatura, which was this like grayish yellowy, which is not the color of Kevin's light shape at all. So I wanted to, as fast as possible, bring it to what I'm actually seeing. So I mixed up some colors, a color for the shoulders, which is kind of this pinky orangey color, and I scumbled it, just put a little bit of paint on my brush, scumbled it really quick in the light areas, did that down the arms. I think I made the arms a little bit, I mixed some more red into that color, and grayed it down slightly, and then the lower back's pretty blue, so I adjusted that color, scumbled it in the lower back, and then the legs are more gray and purpley, so scumbled that in really fast. So I think I did that all in the first 25 minutes, and so then I could really start to see where I needed to take things as far as the light shape goes, because now I am actually seeing colors that are more true to actually what I'm seeing rather than just the imprimatura. So I also don't want it to look scumbled and thin. I want to get a nice paint layer on there like I do for the shadow and the background. So I went back up into the lightest light, the focal point, which is the shoulders of Kevin, and I mixed up trying to get a more accurate color. So I started laying that in the shoulders there, and my mindset for this is to really push the color because Kevin is so colorful, especially on a nice cloudy day. It just really shows all the color in his skin. And a critique that I get from my other paintings is that I tend to, well, I lack in making the painting look as colorful as it could. I could see these orange colors in his shoulder, so I started putting them up there, and it looked not right, but I just thought that I should be pushing the color, so I was kind of going with that. But Magda came by for my critique that day, and she was like, whoa, that's really bright and kind of distracting. And I said that I wanted to be pushing the colors, so what should I do? And she said that's good to push the colors and get all those warm colors, which I do see up in his shoulders, but she said pushing the color too, not just to focus on the warm colors because that can make it look crazy, kind of like how my painting was then, but to also make sure that I'm pushing the cool colors. So there's some cooler pinks and some cooler greens and blues in the shoulders. Once she left for the critique, I started seeing those cooler colors and mixing those up and painting them over the shoulder area where they needed to be, and it made it look much more naturalistic. I guess I took away mostly trying to get more color in it, but not focusing on one extreme temperature, like a super warm color, but making sure that I'm balancing it with the warms and the cools that I'm seeing so the painting doesn't end up looking crazy. And also with that whole day I was trying to get all of the light shape that I could paint it, and I did. I painted the whole entire light shape. So the head, arms, legs, lower back, feet, hands, and it was really exhilarating. I feel like working on my massive cast painting that I'm doing where it's so big and I'm trying to work on the impression of the whole thing is really helping me in my figure painting with painting faster and worrying about the impression of things so I can move around the whole painting at once. Before, with my figure paintings, I would focus more on smaller areas like just the shoulders, but I think I would try and get things more specific too fast, kind of like resolving it. But I think I'm finally understanding blocking in, just getting the quick impression of value, temperature, and color, and trying not to lose the structure in that as well, which is tricky, but trying to keep things more generalized, which I think I am, while moving it closer to nature, knowing that later on I can get it more specific and start resolving, but right now just stay in blocking mindset. Wednesday, I went back to working the shadow and the background, so I was able to darken the background more, darken the shadow more, and there is a pattern with that. Matt's been telling me this for a while, and Magda too, that try and work one day in the darks, the next day in the lights, the next day you're working in the darks going out into the lights, the next day you're working the lights out into the darks, and you kind of go back and forth, because once you get the darks looking more accurate, you see that the light shape is then lacking, so then you work on the light shape, make that more accurate, then you can bring up the shadow to make that more accurate, and going back and forth. And like I was saying, I hadn't really been able to work that way completely because I was working in smaller areas. Yeah, I've just been able to actually work on the whole dark shape and the whole light shape. So this day, because the previous day I had made the light shape more accurate, I was working on the shadow shape. And also the other thing, like I was talking about with the light shape, keeping it more of a block in and not too specific, just working on value and color. The shadow, I'm also trying to do that with working and making it as colorful as it needs to be, also the right value that it needs to be. But the thing with the shadow is that I'm always trying to get and be slower with the shadow, in the sense that trying to make it as accurate as possible drawing wise, and to make sure that the structure is right, because I'm finding if really the transitions in the shadows and the drawing of the shadows is really accurate, that really shows the structure of the whole entire piece. Thursday, Matt critiqued my painting right away, and we were talking about what I should be doing this day. I knew that the lights were lacking now because I had gotten the shadow shapes more accurate, so I needed to bring the same accuracy up with the lights. And I told him that I knew what looked most off was the legs of Kevin, because they were too bright and too colorful. They needed to be more grayed down and more purpley and a little bit darker. Matt said that, yes, that's right, but to not just focus in the legs, but this time just focus in the midtones. And he took a while to explain this to me because I didn't quite understand what he meant, but he was saying that the lights for the shoulders, so the brightest lights are the shoulders, and he was saying that that's pretty accurate. But what I need to be focusing now on is the midtones. So the midtones then are everything that's not the brightest light and then not the shadow shape. So for this painting, that's the lower back, the legs, the feet, and the arm that's holding the pole in the hand. So he was saying really to stretch myself to be thinking bigger and bigger planes and not just focus on the legs, but focus on the whole parts of the painting that are the midtones. And so that's what I worked on, and I feel like I got that closer. Then I worked more on the background, again, kind of spreading out the darker tones in the background. Also trying to get the background a bit more specific. Friday, it was really cloudy and a rainy day, and so it got really dark that day. And I knew that I needed to darken the lights because I had brightened them up too much, but I think because everything was looking a lot darker anyway, that I really overdid darkening the lights, so I'll have to fix that this coming week. But what I did was, again, working on the lights and really cooling down the lights because I think I did have them still too warm. And also, still, I darkened the background down a lot, and I think, again, I did it a little bit too much, so I'll have to brighten up areas of it. I was also working with, this time, making sure that the background and the lights were blended in together properly. So the shoulders before were looking like they were really flat and not like they were in a space, so not blended properly to the background. So I made sure this day that I really worked on the transitions around the shoulders, making sure that they got darker as the shoulders turning around into the background. So I do feel like I am getting a little bit more convincing of a three-dimensional shape of Kevin. I'm also working on getting the hand that's holding the pole more specific. So before it was kind of just a square shape that signified the hand, but this time now I'm making sure that you see the basic planes of the hand too. Not pulling out any fingers or anything yet, just really working with the basic planes of the hand. Overall with the figure painting, I'm really quite happy with it because I can see the direction that it's going in, and it's moving in that direction pretty quickly. I know I missed about a week of the figure painting because I went to DC. I think because I know I missed about a whole week that I'm really in the mindset of I just gotta throw paint down, get it as close to nature as possible, so I'm not overthinking things and I'm just reacting to what I'm seeing. And my cast, again, I was not feeling that great about my cast this week, but it did end on a high note, so that's good. So working on the cast, I don't know, I've just been feeling distracted, I guess, and I know I've been getting over the flu, and so I've been, well, a lot more tired because of that. But I feel like I'm just distracted, or the winter blues or something, but I feel like I'm not working as hard on it as I usually do. And it is such a big cast that it's hard to, well, it's just taking a long time to paint, obviously, because it's so big and complicated. But I'm kind of in between stages right now, and I've been in between this stage trying to get into the next one for, it seems like a while now, so I just feel like almost like nothing's happening with the painting, or I'm not making progress. Though I know I am because I'm painting on it every day. But it's just not a good feeling either not to be seeing the progress or the work that I'm putting into it. Earlier this week, I was working on the shadow shapes of the baby heads, especially the main baby head and then the other ones that are to the left, because those were pretty lacking. And getting those shadow shapes in, working on the transitions of them and how the shadow line transitions into the lights, it did help a lot, and I felt like it did bring the painting up to a higher level of accuracy, which is what I'm going for with the structure. Matt was also talking to me about the shadow shapes and how to work the shadow shapes, and I will usually paint the whole shadow shape at once, and he was saying that I don't need to do that. I could just be working on the shadow line or just kind of wetting the shadow line with paint. So I started doing that and not working the whole entire thing, but just the areas that I needed to. And because I was doing that and working in smaller areas, I was able to get things more accurate. So saying this now sounds silly that I should have been doing it anyway. I definitely wanted to take note of it, that definitely to move the painting along, if I work on smaller chunks, I could get things more accurate and get the shadow shape more accurate, which is really important. So I'm happy with how the shadow shapes are looking now because I feel like they're looking more unified and more accurate. Also, I repainted the top of the main baby head, and I liked how the brushwork that I had on there, I thought it looked interesting and really nice. I was a fan of it, but I was lacking structure in it. It wasn't looking round or not like solid plaster that you could knock on. So I kind of had to destroy what I had under there and repaint it. But I'm glad I did it because I can feel, or I can start to see the three-dimensional structure of it now. So I'll just have to wait till that dries and keep painting over it to get it more accurate. And then I'm sure once I get that like three-dimensional look to it, I could get more interesting brushstrokes on top of that. And then also I worked on the baby head that's directly behind to the left of the main one, really trying to make sure that it looked like it was behind the focal point baby head and making sure that I got a lot of air and atmosphere in it, and also make sure that there's not too much detail in it, or not that so much, I guess, more that it's just subservient to the main baby head, so that the contrast isn't overdone, so it definitely looks like it's sitting behind it. And I was also correcting a lot of the shapes with it, and also working that, not just that baby head. My phone, I have it taped up to a tripod. I need to just buy a tripod adapter because this whole video, the shot must be changing so many times because it just keeps falling off. But not just working that main baby head, but also the background with it, so that baby head really sits back in the background more behind the focal point one. So having the cast end on a high note was seeing the main baby head and the one that's behind it to the left a little bit, and I feel like I'm starting to really see solid structure in it and see kind of like the three-dimensional aspect that I'm seeing in the actual cast. So I feel I always want to hold on to, when I'm working on anything, something solid that I think I'm doing well, and then I can work everything around that. And for this cast, I feel like I haven't been able to hold on to anything yet, but now I definitely feel like I can, and that's just a confidence boost for me, and it has something that I can really work off of for next week. And also, I wanted to share this little drawing that I did on Tuesday evening. It's of Ken, and I'm really proud of how this one turned out.